welcome everybody. We're going to be joining the next session of Neil and Raj's book. This is Book Club, and we're going to be hearing from Anna Ferguson today about her chapter. So I'm going to let Anna introduce herself. Off you go, Anna. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, hi, nice to see you all, and nice that the sun's come out now. I've dried out just about after this morning. So hello, I'm a midwife, a specialist midwife for substance use, homeless people and the travelling community at University Hospital Sussex. And I work in a team, in the One Stop and Enhanced Care team, and we have a caseload of pregnant women and people who have substance use issues. I've done that for about 10 years, and prior to that I worked at University Hospital Sussex as a midwife on the ward, so on labour ward and postnatal ward, and I still do clinical shifts up on our labour ward, so I still do work there. And this session today is looking at conversations about alcohol use in pregnancy. And when I was asked when Neil mentioned about me writing the chapter, I was a bit concerned, because I thought I'm really no expert at it at all. In fact, I'm quite a beginner. And I was a bit concerned about writing the chapter, but once I started to think about it, I actually thought that would really be the main focus of the chapter. And the more that I've used motivation interviewing over the last few years, the more I've realised that actually that's the important thing about it, is that you don't have to be an expert to do it. So that was very much the thrust of the chapter. There's loads of really good theory written about it, excellent theory that's been really informed my practice, been really interesting to read. But what we often hear from healthcare staff is that they haven't got the time, they don't want to do more training, they don't want to have to develop special skills. And I think sometimes in healthcare especially, we can make things more difficult for practitioners to access by suddenly having 3 training courses about it, and you've got to do this and you've got to do that and you've got to tick that box. And I think staff, especially midwives, community midwives who are booking pregnant women and people, start to feel like we've got too much to do. We can't do more things. We can't have more skills we have to use at the booking appointments. So there are 2 things happened to me quite early on around new ways of talking. And one was when I was a student midwife many years ago now, and I was at home. We were doing a postnatal visit with my mentor, and she was a new mentor. I hadn't worked with her before. And we went into the family's home, and I was immediately scanning the room, looking for the notes, looking for the postnatal notes, looking for those notes so I could hold them and start whipping through the questions and asking questions and ticking things off on my list. And the midwife sat down and she almost sort of tucked her hands underneath her, and she said to the couple, "So what can I tell you?" And it was a real sort of, oh, that was so different to what I was used to, and so different, I think, to how we often are in healthcare, how we are so ready to ask questions, tell people the information, write things down, make a plan in quite a regimented and structured way. And while that can work in some situations, I think when it comes to behaviour change and substance use in pregnancy, it's not always that helpful. And that's not to say that that's not the case for everyone. For lots of people who hear the information about alcohol, the evidence that we have around alcohol use in pregnancy, they will stop their alcohol use, whether that's recreational or more than that. People do make amazing changes in pregnancy, in early pregnancy, and indeed pre-pregnancy. But we also know for quite a large percentage of people, they will carry on drinking throughout pregnancy at different levels. So the second example I wanted to give, just before I go into a bit more detail about motivational interviewing, was when I first started in this role. One part of my caseload was working with women who smoke cannabis. So I still do them, but would do sessions with them to help them reduce or stop their use. And so I did some work around motivation interviewing. It was the first time I'd really heard of it. And I read the World Health Organization guidelines, and I did a bit of reading, but I didn't go on any particular training courses. And then I started to use those skills. And at the first appointment that I used those skills that I'd read about, it was like a revelation in that the person by the end of the appointment was identifying things, changes they could make. And we had a definite plan that we then worked on over the following weeks, that person to reduce their use in a way that worked for them. And I think that sort of takes me to my first, to the first slide really, and it's the main goal about motivational interviewing and behaviour change. It's really not a goal until your client shares it. And I think that's what we really need to remember as healthcare professionals, that telling people what they need to do. I mean, if that worked, none of us would drive our cars at 100 miles an hour, or eat 3 cream eggs, or drink bottles of wine, or smoke 20 fags. We just wouldn't do it, would we? Because we know it was bad for us. Someone would have told us it was bad for us, and we'd stop it. The reality is there's so much that feeds into all those difficult behaviours that we have. And I think when we're working with people to help them reduce or stop those problematic behaviours, that we really need to have a level playing field, or to be standing next to that person alongside them before we start to try and make a plan. And it is quite different, I think, for us as in healthcare. We're not used to doing that. I would have said pre-being in this job that I was an empathetic practitioner, that I wanted the best for my clients, that I was there to help them, that I was alongside them. But it's only really since being in this role that I've realised it's actually quite different. It's quite different. And I think that the main part is really that, is going back to those basics of, what can I tell you? What do you know already? How can I help with this? Now, obviously, with alcohol is different to cannabis, because with cannabis, we can do a slow reduction, we can work on that, we can go back and forward. With alcohol, we've got that time imperative, haven't we? We really want to support that person to stop using alcohol in pregnancy, because we know about the evidence that's there. But we also know, as I've just said, that does knowing something bad for you make you want to stop it. And might pregnant women and people feel, if we try and tell them what to do, guilty, cross, upset, those things I've put there. And certainly, as I've said before, some people do get that information and stop. But we certainly see in One Stop a wide range of people. Some who have problematic ongoing alcohol use, so they can't stop. Yeah, they're alcohol dependent. And then I would say there's a second group who are drinking recreationally at levels that are a little bit too high, sort of identify and sort of want to stop, but find that difficult. And thirdly, those people that have carrying on drinking have read the evidence. They've decided, they've read the evidence, and they don't agree with the evidence that we have. And they say that actually what they've read shows that you can carry on drinking, and that's okay. So they're 3 quite distinct groups, and we work with them in slightly different ways in One Stop. But I would say that the basis of all of it is building that relationship and asking open questions and trying to find a common ground that we can then move forward on. What we do know that for some people, an alcohol brief intervention can help. So giving people the evidence, and certainly there isn't a lot of evidence around that in pregnancy, but certainly in the general population, brief interventions do work well. And so for some people, as I've said, that will be effective. Giving that information, most people will say, okay, right, I won't use any more alcohol. But for other people, as I've said, those 3 groups I've just identified, we might need to develop a different approach. And this is really the real basis of what we try and do in One Stop with motivational interviewing, is that we really try and listen first, yeah? Taking that, what can I tell you, really hearing that person's story, really, and understanding that things are not clear cut for a lot of people around alcohol. There's lots of things that feed into people's relationship with alcohol, how they've grown up with alcohol, what their friends do, what their family does. They've looked at the evidence. They've got lots of people have a lot of family and peer information coming at them. You know, mums that say, well, I drank every day and you're fine. So we need to unpick all those things and talk about those things and acknowledge them. There's no point just saying that's not true, this is right, and this is the way we need to go forward. So the things that we can use to do that. I mean, I still find the World Health Organization, that there's much more detail about this in the chapter, obviously, the confidence, the importance and confidence and readiness rulers. And I quite like using those, and we just can draw a scale of 0 to 10 on a piece of paper, and it sort of takes the formality out of often an interaction with a midwife or another member of healthcare staff. Sort of that sort of, right, I'm going to write your notes and I'm going to give them to you. This is something we can do together, and the person can take away with them. It gives them the opportunity to look at how important is stopping drinking to me, how confident am I, and how ready am I, and looking at the gaps between those figures. So as I said, if anyone's interested in that, there's more detail in the book. But it certainly makes space for people to identify what their reasons for change are for them, not for what we think they should be or what we think the evidence is, but for them. And once we've started to identify those, it becomes much easier to make a plan and move forward. What we really know in healthcare is that alcohol use is massively underreported. Yeah, so people can easily say to us, yeah, I've stopped drinking and carry on. I'm sure a lot of people do. So what we really, really need to try and do is to create an environment where people can talk to us, and people want to talk to us and want to find out more information and find a way for them to go forward. There's just some examples there about questions that we try and use, sort of open questions. So we obviously need a clear alcohol history, and we need that for the unborn, and we need that for the future child. We need to document that well and clearly, and that's really, really important. But what we don't want to be in is in a situation where we're saying, right, how much have you had to drink, how many units, what days did you drink, because it just shuts things down a lot. So these are sort of examples of ways to have more of a conversation. And I spend quite a lot of time talking to community midwives about this. It really doesn't take any longer than just asking questions in a very formulaic way. So it's finding out what people know. Is there anything more you can add to that? Listening to their knowledge, listening to where they're getting that from. Maybe if someone's got a very fixed idea about something and that you maybe know is correct, you can ask permission to say, oh, can I just tell you something that I know about that, or could we talk about that in a bit more detail? And again, it's just keeping that dialogue open. And what I have found, certainly, and I don't want to paint this as like some sort of amazing picture and suddenly it all just works perfectly and the person just gives up, because obviously it's not like that. It's often a road we go down where we go back and forward, and we do steps forward and steps back. But certainly I think the progression and the honesty, we certainly get much more honest evaluations of alcohol use in pregnancy, and we make plans that people can reduce and stop their use much more effectively than without it. One of the things that I read early on was in one of the Miller books, who's one of the sort of gurus of motivation to me, was it's like having a field and picking a bunch of flowers from it. So letting the person pick what they want to, and then at the end you give that bunch of flowers to them. And when I read that, I thought, oh my gosh, that's really that's just not the case. But you know what? That image is really stuck in my head, and I really try and use that when I'm working with people, trying to think, what are they telling me there? What can we put together here that I can give to them for them to take with them, that's going to help them reduce or look at their use or evaluate where they are with their alcohol use. So I think that's about 15 minutes now. That's really, it feels a bit of a sort of, I hope that's been clear. It's felt like a bit of a whistle stop sort of summary of it. And obviously there's a bit more detail in the chapter, but I hope that was useful in some way. If anyone does have any questions or would like anything clarified or anything that I didn't go into in enough detail, then please do ask. Is that okay, Jana? Is that enough?
Yeah, thank you very much, Anna. I'm just going to stop the recording.